Everybody, welcome to the Post-Series show with the Red Sox and Blue Jays series. Obviously, the Red Sox unfortunately dropped this series 1-2. Winning pitchers included Hansel Robles, Jose Barrios, and Kevin Gausman. Ian, your initial thoughts on the series?
Yeah, we might be in a little bit of trouble with the way that we're playing right now.
Yeah, I totally agree. In a cutthroat American League East division, I feel like the Red Sox are going to struggle to be a contender. But just going off of what you said, what do you see as like the main point, the main place where the Red Sox are struggling? Because I mean, obviously the pitching, the hitting consistency, which we'll touch on later. What do you see as like the major main point that needs to be changed?
Yeah, so I think I think we knew what we were going to get ourselves into with the pitching, so I don't really want to talk about that. I want to talk about hitting with runners in scoring position because
That's a good
that
one.
feels like the Red Sox they've come up short with that pretty much the entire season. It feels like at this point. Like I mean, we say this all the time. It's still early. It's still April. I mean, the Braves were under 500 until August, and they ended up winning the World Series last year. So anything can happen during a season. But right now, Red Sox hitting with runners in scoring position is something that I think they need to work on because anytime they get a rally, anytime they get a chance, there were times like these games, the Red Sox should have at least scored like maybe 5 or 6 runs every game that they left on the table because anytime that they had runners in scoring position, even with no outs, somehow they just couldn't get it done no matter what they did. And like, even if they tried sacrifice bunts, if they tried whatever, the only time that I can remember hitting with runners in scoring position worked was in game one. Other than that, I didn't see anything else outside of the series.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. Uh, let's talk about game one. Now I'm gonna start off with a quick disclaimer. I didn't watch much of this game. I watched some of the later innings, like maybe the sixth, the seventh, and the eighth. But it was a pitching matchup between Nate Eovaldi and Yusei Kikuchi. Now, unfortunately, we didn't see too much offense in that game. It was more of a defensive game, the rubber match, as they like to call it. But there are guys on the team in our rotation like Hanzo Robles, Matt Strom, and Garrett Whitlock, who are really strong relievers in that game. Uh, how do you think our bullpen's healing? Because I think it's kind of healing.
Yeah, I mean, I think as of right now, we just have to find the right mix of guys for the right situations. You know, Cora said in the beginning of the year that they didn't have like a set closer. And I think that's just due to the fact that we've said this a bunch of times too. It was a short spring training. You know, they need to find the role for each person that's gonna, each person has to find their role on the team, and that includes the bullpen. So if this means that we're gonna have a game with, like we said, Matt Strom and you know Garrett Whitlock, Hansel Robles, like all three of them looked really good together. Maybe later in the year we see that as our closing, finishing every game. So at this point, I I guess I can't say anything too crazy about it, but right now it's looking pretty good. And if we can see that more and more, I would like to see how that kind of bullpen finishing works.
Yeah, and like you were saying, we haven't found our definite closer yet. Before I touch on that, I just want to say I just saw a note in the chat from David, our other member of BSML. He cannot be on tonight, but he made sure to note in the chat. He made a joke that Heim Bloom hired me to be in the Red Sox front office last night. I don't know if you guys follow my Instagram at Brady Deniston, but I actually got to take a selfie with Heim Bloom last night when I went to the game. But
That's called networking,
it
Brady.
is.
It's called networking.
Yeah, but so you were saying how we don't have a definite closer. Who would your candidate be to be our night in, night out guy?
If I had it the way that I wanted it, I would say Garrett Whitlock because Garrett Whitlock is our best pitcher. Granted, he can go multiple innings, but at the same time, he's one of the most dominant pitchers in the league at this point at coming out of the bullpen. It might not look like it, but he's been probably the best Red Sox reliever in the last like 2-3 years. So if I had it my way, I would keep Garrett Whitlock as our closer. I know that's not really it's not the situation the Red Sox want him to be in. They eventually want him to be a starter, but I would put him as my closer.
Yeah, and I saw some TikToks. Shout out I forget his name now. You said his name in the first part of the video when we were talking about that worst Red Sox players thing. But
Yeah.
yeah, he made a video about the ranking all 28 Red Sox current players, and he had Rich Hill at 27th out of all 28. So he mentioned something along the lines of if Rich Hill gets terminated at some point, we could see either Garrett Whitlock get his chance at starting, or we bring up a guy like Connor Siebold, give him another chance. Now, that's something that I feel like we could get at. But again, that's for the very, very distant future. I think Whitlock is a better reliever. I think he's the perfect closer. But I would have to agree that my candidate would be Whitlock.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, the thing about Rich Hill is, like we said, I don't think we can put too much stock into Rich Hill. As much as we need a fifth guy, and we know Rich Hill's pedigree, he's been one of the most consistent pitchers in the league. He's 42 years old. We can't 100% rely on a 42-year-old Rich Hill to kind of carry the back end of the rotation. So,
Yeah, the old saying goes, he's no spring chicken. But now let's talk about game two. Well, like I said at the beginning of the stream, I was at this game. Ian, you were at the Celtics game. Just a note,
sir,
F. Kyrie chance got out at Fenway.
that doesn't surprise me. I heard him in game one. I was watching it on TV. I was
I
watching
was
game one, and I heard the F. Kyrie chants. I
I was
personally
saying
was
we
not
want Brooklyn.
partaking in said chants, but you can imagine that we heard a few of them at the Garden.
Yeah. Let's just say may or may not have participated in some at Fenway. Okay, so obviously the pitching matchup in this game was between Jose Barrios, who I believe is the Blue Jays 1, and Nick Pivetta, who is our 2. I do not know why we employ Nick Pivetta to be our 2, because his consistency is just absolutely abysmal. I'm going to be perfectly honest. Uh, that second inning, I am lucky that that's the point where I went and got food, because that was just rough. I mean, you start off by giving up Raimel Tapia's first career home run. Then you give up just a bunch of RBIs, and you end up letting them get 5 runs on the board. So, what do you think we should do with Pavetta? Do you think we should let him go at the deadline? Do you think we should further develop him in the minors? What do you think of Pavetta?
Honestly, see, I like Nick Pivetta, but the problem he's always had that we've talked about is his consistency. He has none, it feels like. So if that means, maybe send him down, maybe send him to the bullpen, get him right, and maybe give him another chance at a starting role. Now, granted, I think we don't need to do that until later on in the season. If it's still a problem by maybe the All-Star break, then maybe you think about, either sending him down or moving him to the bullpen or maybe even releasing him, which I don't see that happening. I think Nick Pivetta has a lot of potential to be a legit piece in the rotation. So if that means right now it's just some kinks in the road, and maybe he gets over this by the middle of the season and we're talking about him as a great bounce back story. That's kind of what I'm hoping for. I still see
Same.
promise in Nick Pivetta, so I'm not going to give up on him yet. Maybe he's not the number 2 starter, but once Chris Sale comes back, whenever Chris Sale comes back, I think he comes back in somewhere near June. Nick Pivetta will end up being our 3, and maybe if Tanner Houck is as good as he's been, maybe he'll end up being our 4.
Yeah, I totally agree. And not only that, if Pavetta were to get released even before, or like be sent to the bullpen or be sent down anytime before the All-Star break, even that, or before Chris Sale comes back, there's another chance for guys like Connor Siebold, Garrett Whitlock to get their chance in our lineup. Um, before we touch on what I think is the biggest story from last night, I would like to mention the ceremonies before the game about Jerry Remy. Uh, we here at Boston Sports Media Live, I believe we were all touched when he passed away. I feel like we, as a media company about the Red Sox, we were all inspired by Remy. So we here at Boston Sports Media Live, we offer our respects, our condolences to the Remy family, and we thank Jerry for all that he's done for Boston sports media. Because if anybody, nobody did it as good as Rem Dog, and we have a lot of respect.
Definitely. I mean, Jerry Remy was, he was he was the guy that made me want to be a broadcaster or go into broadcasting and going into the sports field, because the absolute joy that he had anytime he was watching a baseball game was just kind of inspiring. And I mean, I personally was super, I was kind of sad that he kept having to miss parts of seasons to having to go back and forth into chemo and different kinds of therapy, which, at the time I was happy that he was back. But I mean, it was kind of sad. So, like I said, I 100% I wish my condolences to the Remy family, and we're gonna miss Rem Dog.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to see the whole presentation in person, and tears were shed across Fenway, but there was a common grievance, and we were all, you know, we all played the game for Rem Dog, and there will never be someone that does it as good as him. Anyway, back to the game. No, beautiful segue. I believe it was the fifth or sixth inning. Jose Barrios throws a pitch to Trevor Story, hits him right in the head. His helmet bobbles around. He falls to the ground. Coaches come out, trainers come out. He takes the concussion test right there on the field. He is cleared to continue playing. He runs to first base. What are your thoughts on just this? Because I feel like yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when I first saw the video, I saw it somewhat in passing, but I had to stop to look at it because it looked really bad. And I am very glad that Trevor Story is okay. I know it wasn't intentional by Barrios. I knew that he wasn't trying to hit Trevor Story in the head, but I know a lot of people talk about, people losing their grip and, balls are just flying at people's heads, which, it's kind of crazy to see, honestly. So I'm just glad Trevor Story is okay and that he was able to stay in the game. Uh, I don't have any ill will towards Barrios because it was obviously unintentional.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't want to say we got revenge. The inning right after, or the side right after, pitch to the head from I believe it was Ryan Brazier, the reliever for that inning, but 100% certain. Anywho, next, I wanted to talk about. Obviously, when you go to Fenway, you realize the sort of the energy of Fenway and how excited the fans are and what kind of electric atmosphere it is. Do you think that impacts players on not only the Sox but the visiting team?
Oh yeah, I mean, the players feed off the energy, whether that be in any stadium, in any sport, really. I mean, not to use the Celtics again, but the TD Garden was insanely loud yesterday. And if you don't think that the players weren't feeding off of that energy, you would be crazy. You had Jason Tatum hyping up the crowd. You had Jaylen Brown, flexing to the crowd. Players love when the fans are going crazy for them. And we saw it a little bit in today's game where, once the crowd got back into it, it looked like the Red Sox were starting to turn it on. So, I mean, home field advantage in any sport is crazy, but when you go to Fenway and you really go to any Boston sports game, it just kind of feels different.
Yeah, and I feel like that could play sort of a negative way. I mean, it obviously plays negatively with the visiting team. I mean, when people are, again, we use the Celtics chanting F and then your name, uh, things get a bit
That's probably
heated.
doesn't make you feel great. Actually, I mean, the TD Garden actually did a pretty good job last night. Not too many of those like long, kind of drawn out chants happened. There were a bunch of times where they were just kind of reminding the crowd to settle down and not really start anything like that. So, shout out to them. But like you said, that's kind of what happens in any sports game that can possibly happen. But especially when it comes down to Boston, it could be kind of a different kind of feeling for an opposing team that's coming in here.
Yeah, Boston sports fans are notorious for being loud and borderline offensive at points. But we're hype and we're met. We for most of the time. Game. I did watch the majority of this game. Um, one of the bigger points that I wanted to make was the changes in the lineup today. In the infield, the outfield, and obviously the batting order. We saw Trevor Story hit his first leadoff since 2019. What's your take on guys like Bobby Dolbeck going to his natural position of third base, seeing Travis Shaw at first base, seeing Christian Arroyo in the outfield, seeing uh, JBJ go back to his home in center field, and seeing, of course, Rafi Devers hitting DH?
Yeah, I mean, this could possibly have to be a lineup moving forward just because Shady Martinez is out now, and we don't know when he's coming back. I think he was put on the 10-day IL. So it's going to be interesting to see what Cora does, mixing and matching with the lineups. I'm not 100% sure how I feel about Bobby Dahlbeck at third base. I know that's his natural position, but I kind of like him at first base with Rafael Devers at third base. But, that's just me personally. And, it's just kind of what's going to have to happen. Like we said with the pitching, it's kind of the same thing with the lineup. We're still trying to figure out what works. And once they find something, you're going to start seeing a more consistent lineup as the season moves forward. And honestly, I'm not going to lie to you. I kind of like Trevor Story in the first hole. I'm not going to lie to you because I feel like Trevor Story is kind of made to be a leadoff hitter. He can put the bat on the ball and he can hit for power. So I wouldn't actually mind Trevor Story. Kike Hernandez has been kind of struggling as of recently. So if that means we move Kike down in the order a little bit and move Trevor Story up to leadoff, I'm really not against that.
Yeah, I think I couldn't have said it better myself. Kike's obviously been on the downtrend recently. We could possibly see him move somewhere around the 5 or 6 hole where Alex Verdugo's been recently. I personally am a big fan of seeing JBJ going back to his roots and playing center field. It was almost a throwback for me to those teams in like 2018 and 2013 when he did that. But it was nice to see JBJ go back to where he played when he was originally with us. But obviously, we want Kike's defense back. And maybe we see Kike shift to right. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, we're just gonna have to see what happens. I've said this already. It's April. They're just gonna figure out what works, and right now, we haven't found what works yet. So we'll have to see what happens.
Yeah, and of course it's going to be tougher because, of course, news came out today of Alex Cora testing positive for COVID-19. So Will Venable was the acting manager today, and who knows if it was Cora that made the changes to the lineup or if it was Will Venable's idea of what the Red Sox should be doing, and it was sort of like a test run for the future. But another point I wanted to make was sort of the Red Sox follow through because when bats only got hot in the ninth inning for the Red Sox this game. What's your take on their consistency? Because I feel like they need to get the bats going way earlier.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to see the Red Sox play, have that kind of ninth inning explosion that they had today. Maybe earlier on in the game, maybe around the first, second, or third inning. So the pitchers that are out there, like Pavetta or Hauk or Hill or Waka or whomever, they don't have to feel pressure when giving up a run because that's something that pitchers, they value the fact if you have a lead, it gives them a little bit of confidence. Maybe that'll give more confidence to guys like Pavetta, who, has struggled, but at the same time, his offense hasn't really been there at the start of the game, which, it's a 9 inning baseball game, but at the same time, you don't really want to wait till the last minute to do everything. So I would like them to maybe score a little earlier on in the game, but sometimes you just can't really control that.
And yeah, I mean, the Red Sox and Boston sports in general have always been known as comeback teams, and the Red Sox, they just don't wait till the ninth inning to really get your bats hot. I mean, even if they were to start around the sixth or seventh, that gives them a little bit of time to build up some runs and scoring. But it's just not great, obviously, as you know, to bats going not until ninth. But I like everything we've said about these games. What are your main takeaways from this series?
Main takeaways, we're still figuring out the bullpen. I want to see Garrett Whitlock as our closer moving forward. I really do. It might not happen, but I want
It
to see
probably
Garrett
won't.
Whitlock as our. It most likely won't. I want to see Garrett Whitlock as our closer. I think he's the best pitcher we have in our bullpen, and I think because of the lack of kind of real experienced closers on this team, he's going to be an integral part to the bullpen. So I want to see him in the closing role moving forward for the Red Sox. Their offense wise, I just want to see him start hitting with runners in scoring position a little better. Game one, Trevor Story hit with runners in scoring position, and Connor Wong had the sac fly to give the Red Sox the lead and the win. But there were other times in that game. I remember even in the first inning, they had like 2 runners on with no outs, and they didn't score anything out of it. So, I'd like to see him hit with runners in scoring position a little better, but we'll just have to see what happens moving forward.
Yeah, I entirely agree with you. Our We saw on the scoreboard they had our RISP standings or our stats the other night, and they were just again absolutely abysmal. So that's something we got to work on in the games ahead. Um, and then we got to find our routine closer, and I perfectly agree with you. It should be Whitlock, but I don't think that that's what's in the mind of Red Sox coaching. Who are your standout players from this series?
Standout players, I would say for Toronto, it was probably I was kind of I didn't really know who to pick, but I was gonna pick Zach Collins because Zach Collins has played really well and he hit the home run off of Evaldi. And I think maybe for the pitching side, Kevin Gausman had a really great game today against the Red Sox. He made it into the ninth inning before he got pulled. So Kevin Gausman had a pretty good game. For the Red Sox, I would say pitching wise, again, we talked about it earlier, the Robles, Strom, and Whitlock. I like that finishing, that ending core. It kind of reminds me of the days back in 2007 when we had Okajima, we had Mike Timlin, and we had Papelbon. That's kind of something that I want the Red Sox to go back to. But, times have changed since 2007. I'm kind of dating myself with that. But anyway, I would kind of give that for pitching. And for the offensive side for the Red Sox, Trevor Story he had a pretty solid series. And I'm pretty happy with the way Trevor Story played in this series.
Yeah, I entirely agree with your picks for the Red Sox. Although I will say for the Blue Jays, I will bring a conversation on the offensive side of things. I will bring in Raimel Tapia, who hit his first career home run off of Nick Pavetta, and he was just entirely in series, and we saw some of Tapia's stuff. And then on the pitching side of things, and this is a bit of a joke, but David Phelps from the Toronto bullpen, he tossed me up a baseball, so I will give him the MVP for the Blue Jays this series. So without further ado, that's probably gonna do it for the actual post-series stuff. Although I do want to mention our next series. We are hopping on the bus tonight and onto the plane. We're heading to Tampa Bay for a 3-game spot with the Rays. Tomorrow's game is supposed to be Michael Wacha Uber. Saturday's game is still to be determined, and then Sunday's game is between Rich Hill and Shane McClanahan. I'm excited to see this series. Obviously, interdivisionals are more fun, but as of right now, we will be doing a series preview tomorrow. So we will we will look forward to that. And guys, so much for watching. Really appreciate if you would subscribe. Follow us on Instagram at bsml.redsox. Thank you, Ian, for joining me today. And thanks to the viewers who stuck through and watched with us. Thank you so much, and have your Thursday.